And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight. My name is Hiko Simon. It's 10:30, actually 10:39 p.m. Yeah, I chased a squirrel. It was like 10 o'clock, and I was going to pick out my stories for tonight. And then I thought, you know what, just before I do that, since I'm probably going to talk about Mastodon, the new Twitter alternative on the show tonight, I thought to myself, I really should update the service, he said, playing around with the video settings on the fly. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. I thought I'd talk about that, and I thought if I did that, well, I should actually make a call whether I stay on the Mastodon mstdn.jp server or move to the Famichiki server, which it looks like most of the international community in Tokyo are on. And so I figured, well, if I'm going to start talking about it, I might as well make a call on the server, including if I'm going to change. So I did change server tonight. The result of that is it looks like I ported all of the followers that I had, and there's like 150, but actually all of the posts that I'd put on the original Mastodon server don't get ported over to the new server. And I'd actually I enjoy having the 500 character limit there, and I actually posted a few. I thought I'd make the content on there a little bit interesting for people to follow, just to try it out, give it a go. So I actually posted some stuff there originally on the old account, which I've never posted, on social media, just stuff about my background and my work and stuff like that. I'll figure out if there's a way to share that. I mean, you probably might have a mild interest in it since if you've been following the show. But yeah, just like literally. Anyway, I thought, sure, I'll be able to port my account from one server to another in 5 minutes and still have enough time to set up the show, of course. And of course, I'll have no technical problems whatsoever because I'm basically a master IT engineer. And strangely, it did not go to plan. So I ended up scrambling at the last minute. However, I did pick out some subjects. I also was keen. The other thing I was keen to sort out for tonight was, YouTube has rolled out some new features, basically making it very easy. You can see at the bottom of the chat there's a little yen mark and a little plus mark and so on. Don't worry about the yen mark, the plus mark, it's new. And it lets me insert polls in the middle of the show as well as have a Q&A. And I've never tried this before, so I just set up a random, hey, ask me anything. And it looks like I have to go, it's outside of the screen cap here, but if I go at the top, I can flip from the chat to questions and see that already we have the JVlog. When will Hiko start on time? Yeah, I should... let me trim that so that it's visible. When will Hiko start a show on time? Never. The answer is never. I will never start a show on time. Thank you for asking. And Dan H asking, what's my favorite butter brand? And I'd say that's, I must admit, when I think of New Zealand, I think of Mainland, but that's a cheese brand. So I don't know what the butter brand is there. I guess it's Anchor butter from New Zealand, but you don't get that here. Instead, you get... I always just get the Yuki Jirushi just because it's always wrapped in little useful, like you get in the hotels, like the little wrapped cubes. I quite like those. So that's what I do here, which is kind of a sneaky way. It's like toothpaste, where they encourage you to put lots of toothpaste on the toothbrush in the old toothpaste commercials. When you have them wrapped into butter cubes, it makes you use more butter than you need to use. But I'm cool with that. So yes, I am a Yuki Jirushi cubed butter person all the way. Great to see a bunch of people in the chat there already. We've got the JVlog. Hey guys. We've got Quint Ranked. Excellent to see you. December Clouds. You were the second like indeed. Dan H. Doing the app mark. And actually, you know what? This is maybe the easiest way because it saves me flipping between screens. Although it is nice if you've actually got dedicated questions. Maybe you can flag to me if you've got a dedicated question. I just do want to try it out. It's nice to have a place just with fixed questions to look at. But yeah, Dan H., how do I think Japan is going to do against England in the rugby? Well, they played last night and they were crap. They were terrible, actually. In fact, I'll talk. It's not one of my set topics. There is a thing about the year before the Rugby World Cup, when you support countries like England and New Zealand and Australia, everybody's thinking very much about not wanting to... Everybody's got their strategy and their preparation for how they are planning to play in the Rugby World Cup and how they're going to win. And there's a thing that they don't want to give their plans and strategies away so that other teams can study them and learn how to counter them in the World Cup. So this year before the World Cup, and particularly the test matches just before the World Cup, everyone's kind of playing because they're trying to suss out the other teams and figure out how they're going to play and figure out where they need to develop, while at the same time not showing their hand of what they're going to do at the World Cup. And Eddie Jones, former Japan coach and former Australian coach, he admitted to that. He's the current England coach, and he admitted to that. There's some interesting interviews with him before the Japan game. And it's kind of funny. While you might think that England might be one of the countries more inclined to take Japan, not take Japan seriously, with Eddie Jones as coach, of course, and Eddie Jones coached Japan to beat South Africa, so he knows that Japan's capable of testing England, and they tested the All Blacks a few weeks ago. And Japan was talking themselves up. They said that they were confident. They're playing France and England, two of the top teams in the world, and they gave the All Blacks a really good game. And they were saying that, yeah, they thought they had a chance of really upsetting England and France. And England, on the other hand, when they asked Eddie what his goal for the game was, he was very transparent. He said, our goal is to learn as much about Japan as possible without allowing anyone to study us, without showing our hand. And yeah, it was interesting because in spite of Japan talking up their confidence, they played terribly, like so badly, almost like I started to become paranoid about 3/4 through the game, that maybe actually as to what their strategy is by deliberately playing not to their planned World Cup plan. Japan was playing so badly, it was almost like they were playing badly on purpose. But it's no strategy to like make lots of unforced errors and to drop the ball all over the place and just be crap. And Japan was, frankly, even if they were foxing, even if they were avoiding playing their best sort of strategy, which they're preparing for the World Cup, you still just don't do the fundamentals as badly. So Japan played really, really below expectation. They got massacred by England. They deserved to get thrashed by England the way that they were. And the tries that England scored were soft and they were embarrassing, frankly. And it was like the bad old days when Japan used to lose and not care about it. So yeah, I guess it's a good wake-up call for the Japan team, perhaps. I hope that it was due to a bit of foxing. I hope they play better against France. But there again, when they're playing Eddie Jones is, actually one of the big team coaches who understands Japan, probably the best, and is actually taking them seriously as a threat. So, in the end of the day, Eddie Jones's objective of learning more about Japan and not giving anything away about England, maybe Japan won that. Maybe Japan didn't give anything away, other than making everyone think that they were crap. New Zealand is playing Scotland, I believe right now, actually, although I can't watch it live where I am. I'll watch the highlights after. But, a really, really great round. I don't talk rugby, obviously, on the show, even though I'm wearing a Japan Sunwolves rugby training shirt at the moment. Yesterday, Italy beat Australia for the first time ever. Samoa, Rugby Women's World Cup. New Zealand won a nail-biting game. I was just listening to the game, and it was pretty exciting. So yeah, lots of good rugby on. But of course, I expect most people here aren't rugby fans. I enjoy watching it. But huge congrats to Italy on beating Australia. And some other great results yesterday. So lots of cool stuff going on. Anyway, Rambato mentioning that rugby is just another excuse to go boozing with mates. That's definitely a big part of it. It's not, to me, I'm one of these weirdos that actually, it's like club music. When people used to say that nobody likes, I used to, in New Zealand, people would tell me nobody likes, house music or techno unless they're drunk. And I'm like, oh, I like, I like it when I'm not drunk. And it's the same for me with rugby. I'm a weirdo who actually enjoys it. But yes, I think most people, you're right, do just use it as a convenient excuse to get intoxicated. By the way, just looking over at the stats at the moment, I see 18 concurrent viewers and 3 likes. So do remember to like. It's really the only thing I really do this for. I do enjoy you all keeping me company. Davo Dentetsu, good to see you in here. Evening all indeed. Tainaka Ohio, good to see you, man. Up early, good to see you in the chat. Hope you're doing well. We've got John Carlo Lanoy. Hello 2 times. Hello indeed. Right back at you. Men's swimmer, need more 2.5 Voyage. Yeah, I'd like to do a 2.5 Voyage. I think both of us are having busy lives. I'm full. I have my hands full with 1 kid, and Victor has 2. So there's that. But I agree. I'd like to get back into do something with them. So I second that indeed, and thank you for that. Didn't a Japanese stadium run out of beer during a match a while back? Yes, the Kokuritsu Kyogijo, where they had the Olympics. They hosted a Bledisloe Cup match between New Zealand and Australia. which between the New Zealand and Australian expats and Japanese rugby fans, most of whom, frankly, most Japanese rugby fans are huge All Blacks fans, New Zealand fans. So it was a bit like a home game for New Zealand. And there was like 80,000 people at the stadium. It was bigger, twice as big as any New Zealand stadium, and it was full of Japanese people supporting New Zealand. They should really come out here more often. They made a ton of money off the tickets. And they would have made a ton of money off the beer, except they sold out of the beer before the kickoff. They obviously underestimated the expat beer drinking crowd. And apart from the fact that they had enormous lines and insufficient service, they ran out of beer before the kickoff of the game. This was, in some ways, people saying that was good. It was before the Rugby World Cup. It was a good way to work out the kinks that they had that miscalibrated, but typical disastrous management by the Japan Rugby Football Union. So yeah, that is how that goes. The J-Vlog, Odie Jr., good to see you. Hey, yo, indeed. Dan H. asks, how is Hiko Jr. doing? He is 13 years old, middle school, into Fortnite, maybe a little bit too much. He's good. He's 13 years old, so he doesn't show me any respect, but what can you do? He's good. Thanks for asking. I'm just going to check out the live Q&A. Do feel free to drop questions into. Time to time I'll go and see if people have added any questions into the chat there. And I see, is this my life? Has added a question. So let's go into this. I'll check into this every now and then, especially since I don't have any topics tonight. So yeah, it'd be lovely if you can help me fill up the Ask Me Anything feature since we're testing it out. And look, you can see there's plenty of screen real estate to use on this. So yeah, is this my life? They're Kanagawa, sort of like their short beaches actually anywhere around Kansai. So they solved the problem in Wakayama by actually shipping over thousands and thousands of tons of beautiful sand from Australia. It's basically actually a beautiful white sand Australian beach that they imported during the bubble to Wakayama. And I stayed there. It was midsummer. It was hot, but it was a really nice beach. There was tons to do. Adventure World was pretty cool. We saw the pandas. That was part of the goal. So I had a great time down there. It was, good food and all that sort of stuff. It was a very typical Japanese domestic, trip, but that's what I did. And my impression is it's a bit, like I say, it's a bit of the beach prefecture beside Osaka. Is how I seem to take it, but it's lovely. Tai Nakamura asks, do I have any new music tracks? I do not. I might actually, maybe a bit of a spoiler. I don't know yet. With the economy as it is, there are some plans where I may be traveling for work. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that, but maybe traveling for a time. Like this show, I may have to take this show on the road for a couple of months. We'll see. If I do, I'll be Tanshin Funin. I'll be on my own. So I am thinking I might fill in the time partly with getting back into music. So I would like to do that, but unfortunately I've not been getting into that lately. Ty, have you been making any music lately? Because you are an awesome musician, actually. I love that you're just a very musical person, and even with the digital workstations and stuff, you've got a really good sense how you make music. So I do enjoy it when you make music, and I hope that you're making music too. Coming back over. Justin Connolly asks, how close are we to chocolate season? We are far, far, far from chocolate season. And this year was a terrible chocolate season. Chocolate season is summer. The idea is that the menthol that you get, the creme de menthe or whatever it is that they put to make, in Japan, the idea is that you have mint as a way of sort of cooling off. So you have it during summer, and it always goes on limited production runs during summer. It's not like in, British sort of countries or Commonwealth countries where you have after dinner mints all year. In Japan, they just sell them as limited edition. Chocolate season is basically when summer limited edition seasonal goods go on sale. And every year they vary it. And some years there's like tons of chocolate mint, and some years there's not very much. And this year was a bad year for chocolate mint, and it's over. So yeah, we won't probably see any more chocolate mint at least until like May next year, unfortunately. I am sad too, Justin Connolly, but be strong. That's what we have to do. We've got wow, Tai Nakamura, your wife and you are making an album together. That'll be cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that. That sounds awesome. Yuri the Best, our man from Kyiv, good to have you in here. We'll be in here for 10 minutes. After that, there'll be a rolling blackout. I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, first of all, I know that there's a ton of stuff still to do there, but of course, huge congrats to Ukraine on liberating Kherson. That was just amazing. Also, very good news. I saw news today that it looks like America is looking at providing Ukraine with sort of mini portable nuclear reactors to help with the power situation through the winter. Yeah, I really hope that Europe gives Ukraine everything it needs, not only to make sure that you don't have more rolling blackouts or problems with food and utilities, especially during winter, but also to make sure that, yeah, Ukraine forces have everything that they need to kick the Russians out of like every place that they don't belong, from Crimea to Donbass. So, yeah, very, very, very happy to see the amazing progress actually. Basically humiliating Russia. The fact that they annexed territory that they didn't even control, and then even the territory that they controlled, they withdrew from like a few weeks later. And looking at their reactions to the Ukraine troops going into Kherson is just like, how could they even pretend that that was like Russian territory? So yeah, really, really glad to see that anyway. So anyway, sorry to talk about. Of course, we have someone from Kyiv watching. I'm going to talk about it, but I guess you're here to talk about Japan stuff, and indeed, business idea: buy a lot of chocolate flavored stuff to sell the Gaijin year round for mark it up 4 times the rest of the year. The problem is, I would probably consume it myself. That'd be like me doing that. You're right. That is a good business idea for somebody. Me doing it, that'd be like a crack addict, selling crack. The supply would be constantly empty. But it's a good idea for somebody who can control themselves around chocolate. I agree. In fact, I did that last year. There was some Pocky chocolate sticks that were so good that I bought like 4 crates, and I actually drew them out past the expiry date. They still tasted fine. I used them until like the following April. I actually did get it to last the whole year, but then they didn't sell them again, and there was nothing this year. So I would have done the same thing again this year. But you know what? Yeah, maybe going big, selling it on Mercury. That's not a bad idea. Tokyo 503, Justice Minister Hanashi fight. Oh, that's a good point. What a wally. My thoughts. I have thoughts on that. And you know what? I'm not sure I tagged the story on it, so I'll share it here. As scandals go, where, and this is like in a few weeks, we've had another cabinet minister resign. So right now, the Kishida cabinet looking a bit of a disaster at the moment. 2 cabinet resignations in a couple of weeks. Now, the first one was that someone was sort of caught having lied about their ties with that with the Muni cult that's continuing to go through the government, sort of a lot of improper, covert political cooperation with a pretty dangerous cult. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, that didn't look good. The other resignation, but this resignation this week was basically the justice minister at some LDP dinner made an off-color gaffe. It was a joke, which is unfortunately a frequent reason that Japanese politicians have to resign, for saying just this crazy, outrageous stuff that they have to retract. Unfortunately, in this case, the thing is, this is one of the very few cases where I'm actually very sympathetic to the justice minister in this case. So you can judge. Japan has a death penalty, and the justice minister is actually in Japan. The Ministry of Justice is in charge, of course, of the justice system and police and so on, but they're also, and the courts, they're also in charge of immigration and so on. But basically, they oversee all of the policy in all of those areas, which very seldom actually become political topics. They're more sort of administrative. But the one thing that they have is that Japan has the death penalty. And however, when people are on death row in Japan, there's a few features of the Japan death row system. They never announce when someone is going to be executed until like the day before that they are executed. In fact, I've heard some days, and they actually drive these death row prisoners crazy because they walk them to the execution chamber apparently like every day, and they don't tell them. It's like a prank where they prank them that they're going to get executed every day for years, and they don't find out until the day that, oh, today's the day we do it for real. So there's been a lot of questions about, having a death penalty at all, which I disagree with, is a problem, let alone the way that Japanese do it and the way that it can cause mental illness and so on and traumatize the people involved. However, in Japan, even if someone's been sentenced to death, nobody gets executed unless the justice minister signs an order, basically orders those sentences to be carried out. And there are some anti-death penalty justice ministers who don't sign any execution orders, and as long as they are justice minister, nobody gets executed. There are some very pro-death penalty justice ministers who, as soon as they come in, 20 people get executed all at once. We had a couple of times every few years where there'll be a whole bunch of people executed all at once. And so, yeah, the justice minister at a dinner party sort of made a self-deprecating anecdote saying that, you know, the minister of justice position is not very high profile. They don't gain a lot of media attention, so it's not very good for raising your political profile. The only people who really raise their political profile while being justice minister are people who execute lots of people. And, you know, since I haven't signed any execution approvals, you know, I remain not very well known. So he sort of made a joke, saying that he wasn't well known because he hadn't killed people. And here's the thing: that's a good thing. You know, and the fact that he made a joke at all about his power to execute people as justice minister is inappropriate. And probably worth a retraction and an apology, but he was forced to resign. That was a scandal, and yes, he looked silly, but here's the thing. I would rather have a justice minister who doesn't execute people and makes jokes about himself not being very famous because he doesn't execute people than a minister who doesn't make jokes but executes people, you know. So, you know, I'm worried that they're going to replace the justice minister with somebody who actually, who actually kills people. So, yeah, in my opinion, although there was a scandal, I think that as Japanese scandals go, this is probably the most sympathetic scandal I've heard in years. And it's a shame that he resigned. But there we go. Kerberos Tenshi, you're here with cookies. You missed all the squirrels, man. I've set up a Hiko Simon at Famichiki. I'll type it in the thing. If you're on... if you're wanting to just have a lifeboat ready from Twitter or even Facebook, because why not? I have set up an account on Mastodon on a new server. I actually just moved it just before the show, so I'm Hiko Simon at famichiki.jp. So you can follow me there if you want to follow me there. Quinn Rankett, it seems that I understand the analogy. By analogy, why some people support Trump. I'm not sure if I can connect the dots on that, but yeah. In any case, Dan H, do I think it'd be possible that the garments industry would illegally hire a Western immigrant like they do with Indonesians and Vietnamese? Oh, I don't think that it's racial. It's money mostly. I mean, so for example, with the way that the lifestyles are rapidly improving in Vietnam and even Indonesia, for example, and how Japan is pivoting to having people from Myanmar, at least before the military dictatorship kicked in again, those places have large populations. They you know, it's a win-win where Japan can pay low wages and they can do well off it. But sure, I mean, you know, why not Albanians or Moldovans? The poor countries in Europe, you know, I mean, the formula is kind of the same. They have much smaller populations and they're further away, and less familiarity with Japanese culture, perhaps. But at the same time, I don't think that there's a racial block on that. I think if it makes sense, that they would look at it. The thing is, in the end of the day, the problems with Albania and Moldova, you know, Ukraine might have actually made sense. Just because it actually has a large population and size, obviously. But there again, they had trouble with corruption and rule of law. And all countries in the EU basically are just priced out, you know. So I don't know. It's kind of like I don't think that there's the idea of illegally hiring a Western immigrant. Yeah, I think that they might illegally hire if people got under the apprenticeship visa scheme. I'm sure if there were Eastern Europeans or people from less well-off European countries, I don't see why they wouldn't. And remember as well, I mean, Westerners can include Turkish people, Iranians. You know, I think, well, maybe they don't fit in the definition, but you know, there's some zones there where at least the economics are similar to the people who come in under the current scheme. But clearly, Japan promotes the scheme. You know, the government promotes the scheme in Asian countries, and it's intended positively as a form of as an Asian exchange program. So I don't know, it could happen, but yeah. Yuri the Best, can I talk about sarcasm, irony in Japan? Is it true that it's not really a thing and people get really mad? Kind of. Sarcasm exists in Japan. It's called hiniku. And in fact, if you go onto anonymous forums such as 2chan or whatever, where people are safe and completely anonymous, Japanese are not only capable of irony and sarcasm, but they're actually quite good at it. The problem is that it's not socially very acceptable. And you don't have conventions of humor in Japan around things like satire and parody. For example, I've heard a story that there was a book published by a former bureaucrat in the 1990s where he tried to write a Japanese version of Yes Minister, which the idea is brilliant because, Japanese bureaucracy is famous for being arcane and very much like the British Yes Minister sort of TV show about basically how a government minister and the bureaucratic vice minister are basically always sort of jostling for influence and power over decisions. And they're very clever. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's a 1980s British comedy show. They tried to write a book that was a Japanese version of this. So someone tried to do this satire of the bureaucracy. However, he was found out who he was. And the problem was he was still working at the time and he was fired. So, the repercussions of it. So it's not that it doesn't exist, and it's not that if you do it that nobody will understand it and everyone will be offended. The point is, you have to kind of do it in a safe space. You have to know that it's okay. And this is the biggest problem with Japan. You might make a joke, for example. I mean, I've made every type of joke. You make a joke about a political party, you'll find out that the person that you talk to actually runs for that party, or you make a joke about a religion, and you'll be surprised. Remember that, we talk about all of these cults. The biggest one in Japan, like 1 in 10 Japanese are a member, more than 10 million. They claim like 14 or 15 million. So if you talk to 10 people and you make a joke about that religion, which I have done, 1 in 10 people, and the thing is, they won't even get angry at you. The Japanese way of doing, well, they might get angry at you, but the Japanese way is that they will just never speak to you again, and you won't know why. And the penny will drop later on. So yeah, you have to be careful. You can actually, people will just cut off their relationships with you over being offended. And sarcasm and so on also frequently doesn't go over. Particularly, I think, as a foreigner. Again, the whole thing about sarcasm working is that context has to be, understood in a shared way. And I think when Japanese are dealing with foreigners, even familiar foreigners, sometimes they still switch off and they assume, they'll assume that you would never be sarcastic, when you're dealing with, because foreigners are kind of held up as guests. So everything's on a certain level of formality above what it might be like within a family. Within families, absolutely, Japanese are sarcastic and cynical and quite funny. And this is, again, the reason I love Nichan is basically Japanese anonymously talking with each other, making fun of politicians and cracking jokes like they're talking with their families. But it's really rare outside of very close personal relationships that you would get people feeling comfortable or safe to make those kind of jokes. And as a foreigner, when you're being seen as a guest, when you're an elevated sort of formal guest, yeah, the idea of breaking the ice with a dirty joke or a sarcastic joke, people won't get it and they'll be confused and easily offended. It's gone poorly for me so many times. I've stopped trying. So it exists, but it's not really generally accepted, and it's very hard to find the right circumstances that you can do it. If you make really, really good friends and you check before you get into it that it's okay, you can do it. You can do sarcasm, but yeah, it's a minefield. Wow, we haven't even started yet, but I'm enjoying just the comments and the questions tonight. Quint Rankin, are there Western comedy shows popular in Japan? I haven't really been watching much Japanese TV lately. If you go onto the old NHK, it is funny how Japanese people would just they were showing reruns of Full House until like the early 2000s, like 10 years after it was discontinued in America, and it was kind of funny based on what they were showing as the English learning shows on NHK. Japanese would get really into kind of obscure TV shows, and they would sometimes, like Japanese, nobody in Japan knows about Seinfeld because it was never really promoted on TV here. But they know about Full House. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. In terms of lately what's popular, I don't know. Lately, there is definitely a thing where I think 20 years ago when I came to Japan, foreign TV shows on Japanese TV were almost always American shows, whereas lately foreign shows are overwhelmingly Korean. Korean culture kind of works, I think, for Japan in that it's kind of familiar, but it's kind of different. But it, it's a little bit like an exaggerated parallel would be like Norwegians and Italians. You can imagine how, Japan sort of being the Norwegians, like Italians just look like they're having a lot more fun with everything. They're a lot more expressive and a lot more emotional. And I do remember I watched a couple of Korean dramas. I personally don't, it's just extra work to watch them because I'm watching them with Japanese subtitles and so on. But I did watch a couple, and it was funny how you started to notice, just like you have with Japanese dramas. With Japanese dramas, everything's always understated, and everyone very awkward, and whereas Koreans, they're just like throwing themselves. There's always a man who's always acting sort of very nice, unfailingly nice, and a woman who's like angry, and then there's a mum. There'll be a scene of the mum, running into the bedroom and throwing herself on the bed, screaming in frustration. And I don't know, everyone just seems to be more worked up about everything, which makes for better TV. And Japanese love it. It's entertaining. So I don't know how what Western shows are popular lately in Japan, especially with streaming. But yeah, the Korean dramas are killing it. Couldn't rank it. Are Westerns popular in Japan? Again, I don't know. I think historically they probably were. Again, I mean, Americans brought a lot of films in. It is ironic how much the samurai movie and cowboy genre mutually influence each other. Of course, the notion that some of the best westerns ever made are actually rip-offs of Japanese samurai dramas. I'm sure that there was a mutual influence, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are there any good westerns lately? I mean, I guess there are, but yeah. And Auntie Liana in Yokohama, hey, good to see you in the chat, and everybody else. No problems with being late. What's the deal with that, with sarcasm? Yeah, it's an uptight. Japan is an uptight culture, and again, that doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't mean that Japanese don't have a sense of humor, but the social conventions just make it very tricky. Anyway, topics. I do actually have topics, and there's only 20 minutes left, so I'm going to dive into them. In fact, you know what? Before I dive into them, since I've done this, let's look at the Ask Me Anything questions again. Wow, I do see more questions, so let's see. 11, did I get my Pocky? What flavors do I like? I don't really eat Pocky very much. I love the Chocolate Limited Edition ones I got last year, and I got crates of them, and they lasted me 12 months, but they didn't come on sale again this year. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, I'm not a big Pocky person, but yeah. Men's swimwear. Have I ever played pachinko? Have I had any run-ins with the Yakuza? Thanks hiking. I don't know what thanks hiking means, but have I played pachinko? Once. I played pachinko once in Nagasaki on a kind of weird. I was taken to Nagasaki by a beautiful girl who was the girlfriend of a guy at my work in New Zealand, and she was like totally coming on to me, and even like straight up suggested, you know, just over the bridge over there are love hotels, and they're really, really interesting. And she's like, and I was so kind of innocent at the time that I totally didn't do that. And she took me to a pachinko place and said, "Hey, let's play pachinko." And she's sort of basically, yeah. I was very innocent at the time that I went on this day, but it was very that whole day, and just when I sort of realized, later on that, oh my God, like, yes, he's talking about that was an absolute sure thing that I was too innocent and ignorant and just passed through the whole thing. Like the moment I said bye bye, oh. But yes, I played pachinko with her. That was the only time I played. I put 2,000 yen in. I lost it in like 30 seconds, and I'm like, well, that wasn't fun. I can play for 30 minutes on a 100 yen coin on a video games machine. So yeah, I decided I didn't like that. Have I had run-ins with the Yakuza? Just trying to think. I've met Yakuza. I have. I've got a friend who from New Zealand who had connections of that background from growing up, and took me out for dinner. And one of his friends came out. His friend was a high up, drove a Ferrari F40, lived in Roppongi Hills. But it turned out he was a, when we were at a table going around what we do for a living, and we got to this guy and asked, how would you describe, my friend asked, how would you describe what you do for a living? And he says, my job is I apply psychological pressure to people. Oh, holy crap. I mean, that was an interesting night out. It wasn't a run-in. That was a weird, it was a dinner where I got to actually, talk to a Korean gangster who's like the son of a high up, very wealthy. and very interesting perspective on the world. That was a night out. It's kind of one I've kept to myself a little bit. I have no insight. I've never obviously gotten into trouble with them, but yeah. Tai Nakamura, do I still have Tokyo Digital Crew merch for sale? You know, I think the Spreadshirt shop is still there somewhere. I'm sure I could dig it up. Yeah, all the designs and everything. I've never taken it down, so I can check. It's still there. If you want some stuff or you want me to put it back up, I can check that out. But it's still there, I think. I haven't taken it down proactively. Let's do stories. Wow. I do love I love all this interaction. It's great to see everybody. Hey, men's swimwear, I do appreciate it, but you don't have to. By the way, I know it's all there, but I don't monetize the videos. No ads. I will go and enjoy some mint pocky on that when they come out again. So thank you for that. Turning on the live chat one more time to offset my pachinko loss. Very good. Thank you. Appreciated. The Lone Wolf Club is like the Japanese equivalent to the American West. Indeed, indeed, there's a genre like it. So anyway, stories. The first story is, I've talked many times about how I love the YouTube channel Linfamy, and it didn't seem like a very interesting topic, the how Christians introduced the first mechanical clocks to Japan for God. What I loved about this episode, just apart from just how surprisingly interesting it is as a topic and how funny Linfamy is and how awesome a YouTube channel it is, and you should all subscribe. But I didn't actually realize he explained that the problem with mechanical clocks for Japanese was that while the mechanical clocks, moved Japan through a 24-hour day or through 12 hours twice a day, he explained that there was a problem for Japanese when Westerners came to Japan and they said, let's meet at 3 o'clock. The Japanese had a timekeeping system that was based on a 12-hour day where there would be 6 hours of sunshine and 6 hours of dark. But basically, through the year, when the days are longer and the nights are shorter, and then the nights become longer and the days become shorter, rather than being the same duration of time, like 1 second and 1 hour being a fixed duration like on a mechanical clock, they would move through the year where basically the day would be so that 3 o'clock would be exactly in the middle of the day, and they would divide, and 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock was exactly the middle of the night. So basically the hours, the duration of hours would change during the year based on the length of the day or the length of the night, and they would just divide the day up into equal quadrants. Which, when you think about it, for people who don't have watches or clocks or anything like that, that's a very logical way of actually keeping time. But it meant that, when 3 o'clock in the day can be towards the end of the day at this time of year when the days are shorter, whereas it would be, middle of the day, in other times of the year. So basically, Japanese would never be on the same time as Westerners when they set meetings. But it was a thing that Japanese were marveled at the mechanics and the artisanry of Western clocks. The most amazing thing is that Japanese, classic Japan, even in the Edo period, they actually learned how to break apart these clocks and make them themselves. And they figured out how to make clocks that could actually match the Japanese timekeeping system, where throughout the year, they would actually adjust the length of the hours so that they would keep accurate Japanese time. I never even occurred to me that you could tell time in a way that varies and changes through the year. I guess that's exactly what would happen with the sundial. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, and it made me realize, there's different ways to think about keeping time, which I loved. It's a fantastic episode. You should check that out. The Twitter drama. I like Twitter. I've got 14,000 followers there. The site saved my life after the Great East Japan earthquake. It still is infinitely better than Facebook. And honestly, all I want Elon to do is nothing. Just as long as he does nothing, the site is fine. The problem is, of course, Elon is doing lots of things, and that makes me fearful for the site. It is an absolute dumpster fire at the moment, but I do hope things will settle down and improve. But in the meantime, a lot of people are checking out the site Mastodon, which seems to be like the main preferred, lifeboat for people looking for alternatives to Twitter at the moment. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's all decentralized, and I can see the ways that it can probably get into trouble in future. But for now, there's a nice community there. I'm still definitely using Twitter as my main. But I am setting up on Mastodon. I am enjoying that you get to post with more characters. I'm telling more stories just about my time in Japan. So if you enjoy following me here on YouTube, you probably enjoy what I have to share on there. So do feel free if you want to check out Mastodon. One thing about Mastodon is that you have to choose a server You can follow people on different servers, and I do that. I follow people. You are on one overall account, but basically, when you look at the general local feed that you have, it's always determined by which server you're on. And I moved from an all Japanese server just this evening to a Famichiki, to a sort of Gaijin Twitter um, refugee sort of server, which has a good community. So if you're interested in checking that out, do come and check that out. I am on there. And I just set up just tonight. I just moved from the Japanese server to the Famichiki server just before tonight. So before the show tonight. So the account is now back to empty. But I'm having a lot of fun there. So do feel free to follow me. And yeah, that seems pretty cool. With tourists returning to Japan, there's a high-profile sort of TV show that interviewed foreigners about what their impressions of coming into Japan after it's been closed all this time was. And they've got 2 Americans here. This got a lot of attention among the international community, and it got picked up by Nichan, as you can see, where they asked these Americans, so what are your impressions of Japan? And they said, yeah, it's really strange to see everybody wearing masks here. Nobody wears masks back home. And Japanese reactions to Americans telling Japanese TV that it's really strange that Japanese wear masks. The typical "this is Japan" response at the start. The second one, if you don't like it, go home. But yeah. There are other people more self-deprecating that we're kind of entrenched and we can't really change this, and we were like this before. Kind of adding to the debate on Twitter itself. Of course, some people pointing out a Gaijin Twitter as well when this came up. For people who are still skeptical that it's made any difference, I mean, the death rates in Japan are, like 1/10 of what they are in America. And when they said, well, Japan's is probably undercounting the number of dead people, as we know, Japan, if you just look at overall excess deaths, which is how they estimated uncounted COVID-related deaths during the peak of the pandemic early on, Japan actually had a negative number. Fewer people than usual died, rather than tens of thousands of extra people dying. So it seems, and while that sounds braggable, it sounds like Japan did really well. The problem is, of course, that it still is ripping through the population. We're having an 8th wave right now, right as winter comes up. And it's actually kind of a problem that a lot of people, including myself, haven't had it yet, which makes us more vulnerable to it. It actually, I worry that it means that if I get it, and with the increasingly sort of strong new strains and everything like that, it could put us in more trouble. So, we've done well, and I think mask wearing has contributed to that. And I still wear a mask whenever I go out, even when I run. But, at the same time, I still think it's inevitable that I and everyone else is going to get it at some point. And, I don't know, maybe it's better to build up your immunity sooner. Sorry, it's getting a bit dry lately. I've found the last few shows. I've got the humidifier on at the moment, but yeah, sorry, my throat dries out a little bit. Dan H, Twitter was like Tumblr before Elon Musk bought it, only full of people who like the site, adult artwork, and other adult stuff. Yeah, Tumblr itself was kind of interesting. But that's right. I think the moment that he came in thinking that he would enhance free speech and comedy, and then he basically dared people to test the limits of that. And immediately we found out that, yeah, he's actually less into free speech and comedy than the original Twitter site was. So yeah, no, I am worried for Twitter's future under Musk. In fact, there's an aspect of that which I do have in the topics here that I wanted to talk about, which is this one. The mass layoffs. Now, again, I have no inside information of what's going on at Twitter. I can only read, of course, and I'm sure as someone who works as a corporate internal lawyer, I know that you don't do things like just lay off lots of people without making sure that you get legal advice and that you follow the appropriate steps to protect your company. That said, the way that Twitter's purportedly laid off most of its American workforce and even some of its Japanese workforce, that they suddenly announce, okay, everybody stay home tomorrow, and then while they're at home, they shut off their network access and they say, okay, the following day you're going to get an email that's either going to say that you have a job or you don't have a job. If you don't have a job, you can't come back in. That kind of abrupt overnight, like honestly, night of the broken glass kind of style of laying off like half of the workforce. Even in America, I wonder how the hell that's legal. Like the idea about, you know, giving appropriate notice and having appropriate grounds for termination, all these kinds of things. In Japan, um, there's a story that, you know, um, I used to tell people when I was introducing, like when I'd have overseas lawyers come to Japan, and you know, they would ask about Japan labor law, and I would say to them, well, you know, I'm not a Japanese labor lawyer, but basically the way to think about it is this: is you cannot fire people in Japan, even for cause, even if they deserve to be fired, even if they're underperforming, you cannot terminate them. You literally, the only way that you could terminate someone for cause in Japan is you literally have to catch them burning down the building that you're working in. And I said this once to a regional legal team lead who was visiting Japan. And at the time, there was a Japanese labor lawyer, an outside labor lawyer, who was, you know, sort of briefing us on these HR issues. And he turned around to me and he said, "Yeah, Hiko-san, actually, there was a labor tribunal case last year where an employee who was dismissed from his job after being convicted of arson for burning down his workplace was actually reinstated." So even burning down your workplace, you can still get reinstated in Japan. So yeah, I said on Twitter immediately when I saw this news story that they laid off some people in Japan the same way that they did in America. I said, hey, go talk to a labor lawyer. I don't know all the facts, and I don't know if you were given a voluntary, severance package that you agreed to. But if you didn't, you can probably make a shit ton of money and force the company to reinstate you if you want that. And you know, and immediately on Twitter, all the labor lawyers were going in like, "Oh, if you're a Twitter and you just got fired, please mail me because they're going to make a bunch of money." Blood in the water. So, and it just makes me think, like a lot of things, the way he went about the acquisition of Twitter, the way he, you know, tweets about, you know, gets into trouble with the SEC and stuff. Yeah, that guy, I don't think he takes any legal advice about anything. And you know, sure, at a certain point, when you're like a near trillionaire or whatever he is, sure, you can solve every problem to some extent with money. But you know, no, I really think he's gonna find out he's got much bigger problems. It's going to be much more expensive for him to restructure. He's not going to save money firing people, firing them the way that he's firing them. Um, the way that he's doing this, at least in Japan, is going to be way more expensive. He's going to have to pay each person years of wages in compensation for this, and possibly be forced to rehire them. So, yeah, you know, in Japan, by the way, this whole thing about it being impossible to fire people is part of the reason that they brought in this Employment Contracts Act a few years ago, where the idea was that they wanted to increase flexibility in the labor market here. The idea being that employees would just sign up to renewable one-year contracts that companies could just opt to not renew. And an increasing chunk of the workforce is on such contracts. So there are ways now that Japanese companies are finding it easier to restructure. But if you're like a salaried employee, then yeah, you know, you're in a pretty protected position in Japan. So really interesting to watch just what a dumpster fire. I quit Netflix a while ago. I think I mentioned this. Some of my favorite TV shows actually that I've ever seen of all time: Better Call Saul, Narcos. A whole bunch of great content was made on Twitter. That was made on Netflix, and I appreciate it. But lately, there's just no good content. I did watch the latest season of The Crown, and it was okay. But there's nothing else I want to watch there right now. And they're increasing the prices, and there's no good new content. So I unsubscribed, and I get to watch it until tomorrow. Thank you for the good times, Netflix, but I don't really see anything I want to watch on it lately, so I'm kind of skipping on it. I don't know if you have anything that you will watch, but yeah, that's just me. Um, the J vlog. This is a big bottle of gin here. Indeed, it is. This is a shochu. This is the old stuff that you get in the cheap supermarkets. Cobra Tenchi, any thoughts on Rally Japan? Today was the last day. I don't know what you mean about Rally Japan, I'm afraid. Yuri the best. Final thought: if a room contains a Nipponjin and more Nipponjin come in, the room will contain Nipponjin. That is a fact. You've got that exactly right, Yuri. I cannot argue your logic there at all. Yes. Any other questions in here? We've got from Odie Jr. Would I partake of butter made from squirrel milk? If it was vouched for, like I've had goat milk. In fact, and you know, like goat cheese is awesome. Squirrel milk. No, because I presume it had, mainly because I presume it has like rabies or something in it. That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, so yeah, YouTube starting an AMA on the yen. I've talked a lot about how the yen was like plunging through 150 yen. It may be with the midterm election results, or who knows. But yeah, all of a sudden, the yen has gone up. So yeah, if you want to come here as a tourist, it still is cheap. Remembering that, standard, basically, the timeless expected Big Mac index appropriate valuation of the yen is typically 108, 110 yen to the US dollar. So 138 yen is still cheap. It's still cheap to come to Japan, but it's gone up a lot. The yen has gone up in value against the US dollar lately, which is kind of a relief because it basically means that I couldn't travel. It still is expensive for me to travel anywhere right now. The yen has been worthless. So the big jump actually jumped 7 yen in one day during the week. So that's kind of good. But yeah, Kurasenshi once had horse milk Baileys. Was tasty. Ugh. Yeah, why not? I might have had that at a Mongolian restaurant, actually, come think of it. I think they had some horse milk stuff. Yeah, that's okay. I guess I could live with that. Pardon me. Final stories. I'm going to wrap up soon. We've got Japan preparing for a double virus outbreak. Indeed, there is definitely an eighth wave. We're up to about 8,000 cases a day now in Tokyo, so the curve is going up again. And worries that influenza is also going to rip through, because everyone's been working from home. Everyone's immunity is lower than usual to influenza, so people are worried about that. I think I featured this channel 1420, which does Pop Vox interviews with people in Russia at times. This last one yesterday, just asking like what. In fact, this last topic, what was it? Reacting to you losing Kherson in Moscow. A lot of crazy, scary, nationalist, brainwashed, propagandized people. A lot of people, the majority of people actually, in this particular PopVox video, were afraid to talk on the video. The final man, very nice, saying that, yeah, well, it's their territory. We shouldn't have been there in the first place. But yeah, I watch this channel partly because I have such little sympathy for Russians at the moment that I feel like I need to, hear regular Russian people talking. But you watch it and you can see that there's just that country has a lot of problems, and frankly, there's probably the majority of people there are just too scared to do anything to even speak about problems or that their government's doing anything wrong. And there's a loud vocal minority that actually is fully for what Russia is doing, and a very, very small minority of people that are willing to actually say, yeah, Putin sucks. Yeah, it was an interesting video watching the reactions. I do feel like, particularly as I feel more and more aggravated at what Russia's doing, it's nice to see videos of Russian people, but all my sympathies with Ukraine at the moment. Iraq 299, when running, do I use Bluetooth earbuds? I do. Do I have any dropout issues, etc.? No. I use AirPods. Never have dropout issues with them unless the battery runs out. That's the only thing. So, yeah, I use these all the time. Quint Rankit, they don't want to end up in prison. Indeed, that's exactly it. I watched a clip on another channel. It's illegal to criticize the withdrawal, and it's illegal to support the withdrawal. No, exactly. In fact, I think I might have seen the same clip as you. There was a Russian political TV commentator saying that indeed they looked up the laws, and it's the same sections of the Russian criminal code that, yeah, it's both criminal to to support the what is it, the handing over of Russian territory, and it's also illegal to criticize the military. So they can't. So they either support the military and the withdrawal, and that's right. So the withdrawal is supporting the concession of Russian territory, which you can be imprisoned by for up to like 7 or 8 years in Russia. And then the same penalty applies to criticizing the Russian military if you disagree with the withdrawal. Exactly. So yes, they're in a tight spot there. Oh, there was a case going around on YouTube that Rochelle Kopp highlighted of, it's kind of halfway through and it's hard to tell what triggered it, but there's basically a waitress very agitated in an avocado cafe in Harajuku, basically saying that, flipping out at some foreign, maybe Brazilian or Filipino, I couldn't tell, but some foreigners who were speaking Japanese, flipping out at them, saying that, look, you're being super annoying, so please eat your food and leave now. Please get out of the restaurant. And they said, well, we haven't done anything wrong. We're just going to eat our meal. And then the waitress says, well, I'm going to call the police. And this waitress calls the police in front of them and says, there are two gaijins here. Calls them gaijins, but in an agitated tone, and says that they're being very annoying. I don't know that that's something you can actually call the police. On the Am I a Jerk Reddit thread, I think that's what you would call an entitled Karen. Was Karen actually a Japanese name also, so it actually fits. But one of those kind of scenarios. Not clear what triggered it. Some people said that there was a misunderstanding over whether you get free drinks or free refills with a set, and they were challenging the waitress on it. But yeah, the basically a waitress having obviously a very bad day and flipping out in a way that was pretty flagrantly and clearly racist. So yes, she was clearly having a bad day, but clearly shouldn't have been doing that. Shiori Ito, I think you all know this case. She is a journalist who was raped by a politician. Or actually, it wasn't by a politician, but it was by sort of a famous political advisor. And when she accused him of that, he got all of his friends in the media and political establishment and so on. In fact, she was a journalist and he was a politician. And in any case, although the police wouldn't prosecute a rape case because they didn't think that there was enough evidence to support it, when they started criticizing her, she sued them for civil damages. And she's going through basically the right-wing trolls who basically sort of made her life hell to try to intimidate her into not pushing for civil damages cases. And over basically tweets and so on, sort of mocking her and saying that she was, makura eigyo, trying to sleep her way to the top. She's been able to collect defamation damages, small amounts, but still nice to see that she's getting revenge on trolls, and it's a good warning to be careful on online in Japan. And that's it. That's all the stories that I have for tonight. We're coming up on exactly 1 hour. Maybe the last thing I'll mention is at the moment there is the ASEAN meeting in Cambodia, and there's talks there's speculation that maybe the Japanese Prime Minister, who's there with the US President, he may talk with the Korean President. The Korean President is, for what it's worth, as conservative Korean presidents always are, he seems very Japan friendly, and he clearly wants to resolve the problems Japan has with Korea and set up good relations, which is wonderful, and I want that too. The problem is that in Korea, even if you do a deal with the friendly presidents over there, it'll get completely thrown out and made worse by the next economics and defense and everything. But the problem is it so is entwined with left-right politics in Korea, where basically leftists in Japan will always torpedo any deal with Japan over anything. So I don't think it's possible to resolve, but I hope that they find a way to do it. It'll be good if they can do that. That's all the topics I have for tonight. Is anyone else having buffering problems? Eder says no. Yeah, I'm sorry if you are. I'm looking at my screen. Yeah, I can't really tell if the problem's on my end, but hopefully you can see the show okay. I'll do a final look at the Ask Me Anything. If you like that feature, I'll keep it going in future shows. I don't see another question, so yeah, I'll definitely use that next week. It's good to see you all. Do check out, of course, follow me on Twitter, as always. Dan H., when are we going to do the Tokyo Tonight meetup? Angry Astronaut frequently does them in the south of England going on. I've been thinking I would like to do that, and I would like to do a Tokyo meetup. I should do that. Now things are going back to normal as well. I tell you what, December or January, let me have a think. Maybe if I set it for a date in the future as well for people, let's do a Tokyo Tonight meetup. We can totally do that. By the way, you watch The Angry Astronaut as well. I find him a little bit annoying, but I do watch him. So yeah, okay. Yes, indeed, it looks like he's doing meetup. So I guess, yes, let's do a meetup. I should do a poll. Next time I'll do a poll when people would prefer, mid-December or mid-January. You don't want to do it at the end of December or start of January because people are on vacations. But yeah, let's do a meetup in December or something. I've been waiting for years to do a meetup anyway. So follow me on Twitter. Do follow me on Mastodon as well if you're looking for a new site to check out. I'm on famichiki.jp. I put it in there earlier. And yeah, have a good week. Stay safe, everybody. Would love to do a meetup soon. Do smash the like button. I do appreciate it. That's all that I do it for. 10 likes at the moment. And have a good week, everybody.